We're learning Hilchos Kibud Vaeim. I want to ask the Olam, what's the practical application in being Mekayim Kibud Vaeim? How is one Mekayim Kibud Vaeim? Now, a lot will answer. Everybody will answer. We're learning the Gemaras, the Gemara in Kedushin, Taner Rabbanon. What's covered? So the Gemara lists out 6 different ways how to be Mechavid. A father, Machiloi, Mashkeyu, Malbishoi, Machasa, you cover him, Omanol, different girsa, Machnes, Umoitzi, that's Kibud Vaeim. Even though that's Taka, what the Gemara says, what had to be Mekayim, the Mitzvah say the rice of Kibud Vaeim. But as we'll see behemshech of the Shiur, that's only a chelik, and could even be the very least part of the kiyum of mitzvahs Kibud Vaeim. In the Sefer Charedim, lived in the times of the Arizal, he was actually the Gaba in the shul of the Arizal. The Sefer Charedim, the way the Sefer is set up, he goes through all mitzvahs, the Oiraisa and the Rabbanon, that when you Mekayim the mitzvah, what part of your body are you using to be Mekayim the mitzvah? That's what he goes through. And Memela, speaking about Kibud Vaeim, what would you say? What chelik of your guf are you using to Mekayim the mitzvah? So in Perek Chamishi he says, Lamashal, lulav, when he says lulav, you Mekayim with your hands. Matzah, we were just Mekayim, is with your mouth. Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim, with your mouth. How you Mekayim the mitzvah of Kibud Vaeim? So he says you Mekayim biyodayim. Obviously, when you serve your father, your parents, it's with your hands. Biyodayim ubechol haguf. And then he says also weiter. And weiter he says also that when you stand up for your father, so that's biraglayim. So that's b'maisa, your hands, kol haguf, biraglayim. That's your Mekayim mitzvahs Kibud Vaeim. What we saw in the Gemara, Taner Rabbanon, how ezu a kibud, what's covered. Machiloi, Mashkeu, that's b'maisa. The Charedim goes weiter and he says the following. Actually, when he says, I said Maisa first because that's the most poshet, that's the Gemara that we're all familiar with. But the emes is he really starts off b'dibur, and then he goes and he's marba also b'maisa. But he says b'dibur. The next level would be b'dibur. What says b'dibur? So he says. Taka talking about bedibur that says what you can be Mekayim bepeh, just like zocher, you Mekayim bepeh, Kibud Vaeim, you Mekayim the mitzvah bepeh. How does he say, how you Mekayim bepeh? Kabad desavicha vasimecha, this is the lashon of the Charedim, Chayiv lechavna bedibur. What does it mean bedibur? How you Mekayim mitzvahs Kibud Vaeim bedibur. So he says, Shiyedaber lahem benachas, when you speak to them, you have to speak benachas, calmly, beloshen raka, the kovoid, the adness with respect, kemedaber lamelech, and that's a Mekayim. The mitzvahs I say the rice of Kibud Vaeim bedibur, by speaking to them respectful. He brings a Medrash. The Medrash in Parshas Nasi says that Naphtali was exceptionally more than the other brothers. B'yoser mechaber as Kibud Vaeim. So he says, first of all, it was b'maisa because he ran. So anytime Yaakov Avinu asked him, he was able to take care of it right away. U'b'yoser, he says, v'hayotamid midaber la'aviv b'ritzoi divrei piyus tzoif tvash. So it says, b'dibur, to be Mekayim Kibud b'dibur, speaking respectful. And then he says, nichlal and them, this already makes it a shtickle harder. He says, nichlal in this cover, the chiddush, is that a person has to be menschlich to other people. But why? Because if not, the other person is gonna kind of speak shtickle divrei bezoyin. Look at who's this person's father? He was never machanachim. So part of the mitzvah of Kibud b'dibur is to make sure to behave klapi other people, so the other person shouldn't speak bad on your father. Now, Zok the Charedim, we said b'maisa, we said b'dibur, but he says you should know, these are mitzvahs I say in the list of atluyas believe. So he says mitzvahs kibud vaeim believe, the lashon, beliboy, a person in his heart should feel, b'moyach believe, sheyidme beliboy shehem gedolim v'nichbedei haaretz. We'll get to it, how to do it, the eitzah. But sheyidme beliboy, a person should have in his mind, he should think, he should believe that his parents shem gedolim v'nichbedei haaretz. So he says, shezeu ikar kvoidam. The ikar of kibud vaeim is believe that a person in his heart should think respectful to his parents. Umetoich kach, if a person believe by his heart, his moyach, he thinks respectfully about his parents, memele vaday he'll come to mechabed and b'dibur b'maisa. He says in a different place, v'nira the ikar mitzvahs kibud belevu. Brings a maisa, says that there was somebody that was moiridik b'chabed his mother, moiridik machabed. His father was nifta, she remarried. He looked down at it. He frowned upon this that his mother remarried, and the soifas he was nifta b'misa meshona. The Charedim brings, but often that even though b'maisa ubedibur he was moiridik machabed his mother, but it was missing believe, which that is the ikar mitzvahs kibud. He was nanash.
To who? To the stepfather or to the mother?
He kind of, so it was missing the kibud to his mother believe. To his mother, he was machaber, he took care of her, b'maisa, b'dibur, but in his heart, he was fataynet, he wasn't happy that his mother remarried, so that was missing in the kibud believe, and he was nanash. Right. Reb Chaim Shmulevitz in a shmuz, I'm going to quote a little bit the lashon, he goes in, the ein mitzvahs kibud av, I took out 2-3 lines, miskayim ki hilchasa, ti makayim mitzvahs kibud av, ki hilchasa is ella im kein marich haben es aviv. He's very nice, a person could speak respectfully and do ma'aseh kibud, but a person has to believe, think, believe boy. So he says, how taka, what happens if a person is not holding them, how does he get to it? So he says, every person can find at least one milah that his parents are the gadol hadoyer in that milah. Something, a midah, a certain mitzvah that his father's mother's makber, a certain midah that they do. And in this mitzvah midah, he's the gadol hadar, the father. But then he says, then if a person doesn't do it, even if he's machilo mashkeyu, Einoi mekayim kol ikar. He's not mekayim b'chlal mitzvahs kibud av. So we have over here, we're learning now the halachas in mitzvahs kibud av vaeim. We have to understand the aleph base, the mitzvahs kibud av is b'dibur, b'maisa, b'machshava. Now it's different than l'mashal lulav, mitzvahs tzrichas kavana. You have to have kavana. But kavana by lulav is not even if it's ma'akev in the mitzvah avada, but it's a tanai to be able to makayim the mitzvah. Ma'ashek it over here, it's not the pshat as it's a tanai, it's me'ikar ha-mitzvah. At kadei kach we saw, there's even a tzad, Rabbi Chaim Shmulevitz, there's a tzad that if you don't have the right kibud believe, you're not makayim b'chlal kibud aveim. Comes out, a person could be mechaber like crazy b'maisa, but if he doesn't have a belief, he doesn't have the mitzvah b'chlal.
That's different than Shudas Kabbalah. Kabbalah is more for the mitzvah. Here it's Shas Meisa B'Chabad, right?
It's different, you're saying. Maybe I wasn't clear. That's what I was trying to say. Shkoyach. It's different. Mitzvah tzichas kavana is the mitzvah is to shake the lulav. You need to have kavanah when you shake the lulav, but the kavanah is not the mitzvah. The kavanah is ma'akiv. If you don't have kavanah, you're not makayim the mitzvah. Ma'ashenga by kibud av, it's not the pshat is, it's moiridik, you're machabed b'maisa, but you need to have kavanah. The kavanah is that you respect the appearance. That is a cheluk of the mitzvah. By lulav, if you don't have kavanah, it's a tanah. You don't have kavanah, it's ma'akiv in the mitzvah. But the kavanah is not the mitzvah of shaking the lulav. Here, the kavanah by kibud av, not the mitzvah shichas kavanah, but the kavanah, the hainu, the belief, that's a cheluk of the mitzvah, and that's the ma'akiv mitzvah. Now, you might look at me, I'm saying from the Sefer Charedim, but maybe it's more divrei musar, it's not lahalacha. The chachmas adam, in the Sefer Chai Adam, brings in Klal Samach Zayin Siv Gimel, Hakibud hu b'machshava u b'maisa u b'dibur lahalacha, and then he has a separate siv for each one, for machshava, for dibur, and b'maisa. There's another chelik. Besides machshava, dibur, and maisa, mevur in the Rishonim, to love a parent. The Rishonim, I'll start first with the Chai Adam because he's myrach a little bit more, and he says, Avada, you're supposed to love everybody. In this week's parsha, v'haftarecha kamoicha, so there's a mitzvah to love everybody. So he says, but b'noisav lazeh, it's hukash ahavosam, loving one's parent, la'avas hamakam, and he brings a zoyer. But what does it mean, it's hukash? The Taisus Arash and Kedushin. And the Shita in Bechairis brings this Taisus Arash. Es Hashem Elokecha Tira, Rabbi Kiva was doirish called Esan Shabbatayra, Le Rabbis, when it says Es, who is Marba. Till he got Es Hashem Elokecha Tira, he stopped. Who could he be Marba to fear from besides Hashem? So he saw Tabit Chachamim. Zok the Taisus Arash, but wait a second. Before Es Hashem Elokecha Tira is the parsha v'hafta Es Hashem Elokecha, to love the Rebbeinu Shalom. So what's the S over there? Why didn't he stop over there? Who could he be marber to add on v'hafta Es Hashem l'Rabbi Su? Zok the Taisus Arash. No, that wasn't a shaila, because over there the S is l'Rabbis, the parents. But often Mitzvah's Kibud Vaeim is b'machshava. B'machshava, we said before, the hainu to respect them b'machshava, b'dibur b'maisa, and then we see over here also la'avam, to love them. L'maisa, the chelik, a special addition, more than anybody else, to love a parent, from the Rishonim, as we see. Pashtus in the Rambam, it's l'chayr mavur not like that. There isn't a miyuchadig mitzvah pashtus. The Rambam, one of the Geras, he writes a letter to a ger that they were matzar, they were roid of the ger, and the Rambam writes a whole letter to be machazik the ger. He says it's chomer adlam ma'oid, how many lavin, and what the Torah says you can't be matzar a ger. The Rambam writes to be machazik this ger tzedek, and then the Rambam says, Kibud av, he tells the ger, Kibud av, you can be machabed, he's kavod, he's moira. However, you could do all of that, even though afal pi that you don't like them. You can makayim the mitzvah. Ma'ashekin by ger, it says v'hafta mesager. But often, the pashtus, how he's saying is not just that in the Torah. You could say that pshat is by a ger, it's mefurish. The Torah says v'hafta mesager, not by the appearance, but it says you could be makayim the mitzvah afal pi she'inoi. Afal pi she'inoi. If you don't have the ava ma'ashenka by the ger, you need it. Before we go weiter, I left one akuda. We spoke about in the mitzvah of Kibud, b'machshava b'dibur b'maisa. There's also Moira. This week's parsha, Ish Imoi v'aviv tiro Moira, and the Gemara gives a list. What's Moira? Lo yeshev b'mkoi, lo yamei b'mkoimoi. The Charedim says, I'll pee this. He says even b'machshava. What does it mean, Moira? Just like he says, b'kavod. We said before, kavod pshat is in your mind. You're supposed to look up to them. In your mind, look up and be respectful to them. Zok the Charedim, the same thing is b'moira. Not just b'maisa lo yamay b'mkoimam. B'machshava also, it should be yid ma'oisam be'enav kemelech o malka v'yefached v'yirid ma'oid malave b'retzoinam. So says the machshava over here also would be the same thing, the machshava, to be makayim the moira as well also. Since we just said that these kiyum mitzvahs kibud av the machshava, you can be miyashiv the shaila. The famous question that's asked, why don't you make a bracha on the mitzvahs that say the rice of Kibud Av? Why don't you make a bracha? The Rebbe says there's many terutzim, and could be the next year will be focused on that, why you don't make a bracha. But I'll pee what we're saying now, that the ikra mitzvah of Kibud Av is with machshava. At kedei kach, there's even a tzad that if you don't have the right machshava, you bechlal not makayim Kibud Av. Come to Chais, the whole mitzvah is b'machshava. On a mitzvah that you makayim b'machshava, you don't make a bracha. Where do you find that? The Bais Yosef says, Lagabi the mitzvah by bedikas chametz, you make the bracha al bir chametz. The whole arichas, the lashon bracha, what the bracha is on. Toichat varim, the Bais Yosef says, and why don't you make a bracha on bittul? Zok the Bais Yosef, the reason why you don't make a bracha on bittul chametz is because believe. And on a mitzvah believe you don't make a bracha. Remember Kibud Av, it could be that if you don't have the right, if you're missing the machshav, you don't have the mitzvah b'chlal. So the mitzvah machshav, you don't make a bracha. Some say that's a teretz also. We're between Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni. Some say the reason why you don't make a bracha on Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, avada you have to Sipur is bepeh. But if you don't know what you're talking about, you don't yoitza. You have to know the sipur is not a. You don't say that God. It's not saying tehillim. You have to know what you're saying. So it's considered believe. You don't make a bracha. Akapanim, that would be the teretz why there's no bracha. What's the reason for the mitzvah? What's the tama mitzvah? The Kibud Vaeim. The Chinuch says the reason why the Torah was mitzavos, the machabed our appearance, that we should have the midah of akaras hatov. The Chinuch spends a few lines going through to be mitzayir, to explain how much parents did for us and how much akaras hatov we have to have. From the day we were born, and food, and daven for us, and take us to, and teach us, on and on and on. And the emphasis will have it now in the Yotzros and Shavuos. In the Yotzros and Shavuos, the first and the second day, these Daseres Adibris. It's different Yotzros, different words on each one. And by the mitzvah and the Yotzros of Kibud Vaeim, of the Daseres Adibris, and the Terev Chukecha, what the food that we got, and what our parents taught us, and our parents davened for us, all goes through how much our parents gave, and therefore we're supposed to have a akaras hatov. And of course, lahepach, not to be a coffee toiva. That's the reason why the Torah is mitzavos of Kibud Vaeim, that we should have a akaras hatov. Then he adds on and he says, "Umetoich kach." First of all, kashala atzma, a person should have a akaras hatov. B'chlal, to your parents, you have a akaras hatov. A person should have the midah of hakaras hatoiv always. Umetoich kach, sagt the chinuch, a person will come to have hakaras hatoiv to the Rebbeinu Shalom. For everything that we have, everything is from the Eibishter to have hakaras hatoiv. The Chovos Halvavos in Cheshbon HaNefesh, Perek Bais and Gimel, he goes through how much a person has to have hakaras hatoiv to the Rebbeinu Shalom. So the mitzvah of Kibud Av is to have hakaras hatoiv to our parents. A person b'chwal is supposed to be someone who's makah toiv and not a coffee toiv. Another reason for the mitzvah of Kibud Vaeim is mavur in the Meshech Chachma. The Meshech Chachma brings it from a Torah's Koyanim. It's a Gemara. The Gemara says Yochel. The Gemara in Yivam is Yochel, that if a father tells you to machal Shabbos, you should listen to him. Talmud Lo ben Hashem soiset Shmoyer Ani Hashem. The pshat is you don't listen to your father that tells you to machal Shabbos, you listen to the Rebbeinu Shalom. As I said the Gemara. Frek the Meshech Chachma. And the emes says, Shkoyach, it's the Tosfos over there for an art. Frek Tosfos, why do you have to have a drasha? Typically, it's a svara. Just like if a father and a mother ask you to do something, you have to listen to your father over your mother because it's a svara. Because your mother is also mechuyev in the covet of your father. So over here, what do you have to have a drasha? Typically, you have to listen to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Sha'at v'avicha mechuyev in the chvayid of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Taisa says this is gufa where you know it from. But Zakta Meshech Chachma moir de gechidish. He says, and that's I'm bringing the Meshech Chachma. Zakta Meshech Chachma. You know why there's a mitzvah of Kibud Vaeim? Because the only way there could be a hemshech in the Kiyam HaTorah L'Doros, the Shalshelas HaTorah, throughout the generations, could only happen if a person's mechaber his father. If a person looks up to his father, he's mechaber his father, he could be mechaber from his father the Torah. If a person is not mechaber his father, that the Torah would not go down b'dor l'dor. And that's the reason why the Torah says to listen to a father. Different than what we said from the Chinuch. The Chinuch says, Inyan of hakaras hatoiv. Here he's saying a reason why to listen. Now it's hakaras hatoiv also. The reason is because that's what's mamshech Torah medor l'dor. Zokta Meshech Chachma, oy bazoidi would be a tzad that a person shall listen to his father to be machal Shabbos, because if what he's doing is to respect his father. Come to Chais, what he's doing is he's helping out in the hemshech kiyam HaTorah. As I said to Meshech Chachma, there would be a havamina that licked in the mitzvah of Kibud Av. If the reason for the mitzvah is for the hemshech of the Torah, maybe you should listen when the father says Machal Shabbos. What'd say? It's not part of the hemshech. He's saying his goof is saying. Let me say the Lashon.
The big picture, maybe. The small picture or the big picture. The big picture overall.
L'chein b'zeh ged yesh b'chodav gam advam regel. L'chein sol kedaytech aminet delitchi. L'maisa, so why taka not? So L'maisa, he says the reason why it's not. Avad is a drush, but why taka not? Because it's only a hechsher. It's only a hechsher. The Olam's asking, even if it wouldn't be a hechsher, even if it would be a chelik of it, but the whole kibbutz is to be mamshich to Torah, and here it's the hepach. A third reason, the Ramban, even though the Ramban is on the Rishonim, because I want to go from the Ramban's second chelik back. The Ramban explains the reason for the mitzvah of Kibud Vaeim. So the Ramban, The first four of the Aseres Adibris is Ben Adam Lamokim. Kibud Av transfers to mitzvahs Ben Adam L'Chaveri. Dr. Ramban, why Dafka is Kibud Av the mitzvah that is the transfer mitzvah between Ben Adam Lamokim to Ben Adam L'Chaveri? Dr. Ramban of Parshas Yisroi, because the Eibishter says, just like you machabed me, those are the mitzvahs Ben Adam Lamokim, I want you to machabed your parents. I'm not sure if it means because it blibes like you machabed me, but the word is because Hayois, the parents shloitze shutfim ba'adam, and the parents are a shutf with the Rabbeinu Shalom, just like you machabed the Eibishter, you machabed the parents also. This is Dr. Ramban. That's why it goes after the four Aseres Adibros Ben Adam Lamokim.
You hold the taka of Machavera, he puts it with the second half taka?
Oh, so Lamaisa is like this. That's why I said the Ramban last, because of this I want to, and with this I'm going to conclude. Very good, Reb Zevi. With this I want to get into the last Nakuda. But before that, let's just be masakim. These three reasons tonight we said three reasons why for the mitzvahs Kibud Av Vaeim, Hakaras HaToiv, it's Mamshech Shalshalas HaTorah, and also it's a chelik, it's begeder, it's bedoima to be Mechabed Eibishter. Dr. Ramban, in two other places, in Droshes, and also in another place, Dr. Ramban, that's why it's in the first chelik. It doesn't say that it's Ben Adam Lamokim, but the pshat is the reason why it's together with the first dibris. The reason why it's together with the first dibris is it's Ben Adam L'Chaveri. It's called Ben Adam L'Chaveri, but how does it come in to the first word that are Ben Adam Lamokim? The teretz is because Dr. Ramban, the reason for Kibud is B'doime L'Chvoid Amokim, so maybe it's connected. Let's just go back now to the other two reasons. The Chinuch says the reason for Kibud Av is Hakaras HaToiv, and because of Hakaras HaToiv, the parents, a person comes to Hakaras HaToiv to Rabbeinu Shalom. So that would also be a pshat why it's in the right side of the Aseres Adibros together with Ben Adam Lamokim. Avad it's a Ben Adam L'Chaveroi, but the pshat is it's maybe lidei Hakaras HaToiv to Rabbeinu Shalom, so it's connected. But to what the Ramban says, you're being mechabed, your parents is bedoimeti mechabed eibush, is Hakaras HaToiv also. And like the Meshech Chacham is also l'chayra ganz klar like that. Because if the reason for Kibud Av is to help the hemshech, the kiyum HaTorah, so that's it's weiter ben Adam L'Chaveroi, but it's connected to the first four of the Aseres Adibros ben Adam Lamokim, because the whole mitzvah's Kibud Av is to have the Torah, the Taryag mitzvah, so it's connected to the ben Adam Lamokim. I agree 100%. It's a chiddush. It's mamash a chiddush. Yeah, richtig. What do you say? That's sweet.